Things Jesus never said, week 2. Doubt is dangerous. Yeah, Jesus never said that. That idea is nowhere in the scriptures. Now, one of my favorite movies of all time is the 2008 film Doubt, starring Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And if you haven't seen this one, watch it this weekend. You need to see this movie. In one of the opening scenes, Father Flynn, who is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, is giving a sermon, and his opening line is, "What do you do when you're not sure?" On the morning of August 7th, just a few months ago, we went on a hike. It was me, my friend Jason, one of the leaders in this community, my mom, Shiloh, our 7-year-old little girl, and our boy Breck, who's 4 years old. And after our hike, we decided to go to breakfast. I ordered bananas and cream for Breck, and I checked the menu over more than once because, see, he has a severe nut allergy. The food arrived to the table. He took a couple of bites and immediately started grabbing at his tongue and his throat. The bananas and cream had pecans on top, not listed on the menu. I took him out to the parking lot and things got progressively worse. I went back inside the restaurant, then we all rushed to the car to head to the ER. Because yes, his nut allergy, it is literally a life and death situation, as was affirmed to me on that day. I was driving. Jason was sitting next to me in the front seat. Shiloh was in the back with my mom, and my mom was holding Breck. And as we pulled out of the parking lot, his little body went limp, and his eyes rolled to the back of his head. And Mom was trying to keep him awake, and she was calling 911 at the same time, and she was saying to me very calmly, "Drive faster. Drive faster." It was truly one of the most frightening moments of my life. I said to Jason as I was driving, I said, "Man, I can't think clearly. I need you to tell me when and where to turn and how to get to the hospital." And man, I've been to Littleton Adventist Hospital dozens of times for pastoral care visits, but for the life of me, I could not think how to get there in that moment. And Jason was gently leading me with calmness and clarity. And it just so happens that Jason works as security at this particular hospital. So when I pulled in and I tried to park, he reminded me to go right to the front and to leave my car there. And I said something stupid like, "Dude, I can't just leave my car here." And he replied, "I'm security here. Get your butt inside." And while at Littleton Hospital, things got worse. By that time, Tammy, my wife, had arrived to the hospital, and Brett took a bad turn, and they rushed him to Children's Hospital by ambulance. Another really scary moment for this pops. The nurses and doctors on that day, they were marvelous. They said that we got him there just in time. They were able to get him the right medicine and monitor him. And within a few hours, he was fine. Like nothing ever happened. In fact, later that evening, Breck was playing in the backyard climbing trees. But y'all, there were these moments from the very beginning, right when he took those couple of bites of bananas and cream with nuts in it, where I wasn't sure. Next steps weren't exactly clear. Do we go to the ER now? Do we wait it out? Will it get better? Where do I turn? Where do I go? Should I talk to the doctor again? Should I call Tammy now, or should I wait? Man, I'm sitting in this hospital waiting room thinking to myself, I'm just not sure. Fear, panic, anxiety, all the questions and doubts come to the surface in that moment, and it all raises an interesting question, doesn't it? What do you do when you're not sure? So let's play with that question for just a moment, shall we? Now, at the end of Matthew's gospel, Jesus rises from the dead, and then he goes to meet some of his friends, his disciples, up on a mountain. Because apparently when you rise from the dead, you don't just meet your homies at the local Denny's, you know what I mean? No, you pick out a bit more of an obscure place, a profound place like a mountaintop. Now, Matthew adds in one line that I just think is absolutely fascinating. It's one verse, and I want you all to hear this verse. Matthew chapter 28, verse 17. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. If you're Matthew, why tell the story like this? I mean, why add the second part? Just leave it out. If you are trying to convince people that Jesus is who he said he was, Lord of Lords, King of Kings, Savior, Son of God, I mean, why add this piece? Why at the moment the story is at its peak, you say, oh, and by the way, there were a bunch of his own followers who doubted. What a buzzkill, right? Now, this is really interesting. The Greek word here for doubt is this word distazo. Say that word with me, distazo. Yeah, it literally means distance, standing at a distance, uncertainty, vacillating between which way to go. But it's terrible marketing, isn't it? I mean, if you are trying to sell Jesus, this is an awful way to do it. But maybe that's not Matthew's point. I mean, what if it's more about the profound insight on what it means to be human? Some people just believe, and they're good with it. Some stand at a distance, and they don't know what to do with him. And in this story, all of it belongs. Matthew is showing us what it means to be human. This isn't about promoting a religion or trying to convince you that Jesus was right. It is about being human and being fully alive in our humanity. It's about acknowledging the full spectrum of the human experience, belief and doubt, certainty and uncertainty, moments when things are really clear and moments when things are really muddy. And see, when it comes to the God stuff, some of you have experienced doubt, significant doubts. You're showing up, but you're standing at a bit of a distance. And it's not that you're angry or completely disillusioned, but you've got some questions about God and you're wondering if any of it makes any sense at all. And it's like something happened, like a normal Friday morning hike and breakfast, and that thing caused you to say, you know what, I'm just not sure. Or maybe the doubts and the questions came to the surface because you actually grew out of something old, an old way of thinking, and into something new. And those old categories and labels, they just stopped working. And oftentimes that kind of growth is caused by tragedy and loss and grief, but sometimes it's caused by things like a conversation with a friend. And this friend has the ability to just expand your horizons. And after a few of these conversations, all of a sudden, things were bigger. God was bigger. The universe was bigger. Or maybe it was a book that you read or a class that you took. And things were expanding. Everything you knew was getting bigger. And because of that experience, you began the process of leaving an old way and stepping into a new way. And because of that, all kinds of doubts and questions came to the surface. And the truth is, some of you were handed down a religious system that told you that doubt wasn't okay. You just had to believe whatever was given to you. And you've held these things in for years because you were told somewhere along the way that what God wanted from you was your silent and compliant faithfulness. But man, there doesn't seem to be anything faithful about that. In fact, if you're going to be faithful, at least in the Christian tradition, clarity and certainty have to exist alongside doubt and uncertainty. In my experience, when it comes to doubt, we can respond two ways. We can acknowledge the doubt, exploring it as best we can, accept that there may be things that we may never know, and live with the ambiguity that is so often characteristic of human life. Or we can retreat into that dogmatic certainty while suppressing the doubt and ignoring our deepest questions. Maybe the last 8 months of this COVID-19 pandemic, maybe it's raised all sorts of questions for you. You wonder where God is, if God is real. What's God's role in this world? Or is the whole God project just opiate for the masses? Maybe this election or the state of our union has you a bit disillusioned. Election day is next week and you're feeling tense and uncertain. Things feel a bit chaotic. And the pat answers of, well, God chose these leaders, so just pray for them, or don't worry, God's got this, those answers just aren't working for you. Because it's more than just an intellectual belief. It's an emotion. It's the heart, the interiors. You're tired of injustice and pain winning. You're wondering if there's any hope left. Maybe during these months, you've gone deeper into your addiction, your depression, or you're trying to control someone and their addiction. And you've got some real basic questions if this God stuff is even worth it. Or maybe you're a bit of a spiritual refugee because somewhere along the way, you were told that your questions were an act of defiance. So you just gave up some sort of belief system, and you've been real leery of any sort of spiritual community. You know, there's a beautiful story in John's gospel about one of Jesus' disciples named Thomas. And Jesus has been resurrected, and some of Thomas's friends see the resurrected Christ, and they run back to Thomas, and they're so excited to tell Thomas about this experience. But Thomas says, yeah, but I didn't experience it. In fact, Thomas's words were, unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails in my hand and his side, I will not believe. And it's not that he's angry. He's not just completely disillusioned. His experiences weren't that of the others. They were something else. And you know what's beautiful about this story? And you can read it later, John chapter 20. Jesus isn't at all bothered by Thomas's doubt, his stance, his distazo. Out of all the things he could have said, Jesus didn't say, man, your doubt is dangerous. I'm offended by it. I'm offended by you. Man, what's wrong with you? Can't you just believe? No. Jesus says this, peace be with you. And then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it my side. Yeah, this God offers peace. This God draws near. This God says, you have doubts? That's okay. That's okay. You don't need to give those things up in order to get closer to me because I am already here. God is not disappointed in you when you're just not sure. In your lostness, you are not alone. I mean, I think God meets us in exactly those moments. And in those moments, we have to rely on others. I mean, just like the day of August 7th, when I had to rely on Jason for directions to the hospital that I'd been to 1,000,000 times, when I had to trust doctors and nurses and ambulance drivers with my boy, when I had to turn my boy over to God's care. Your questions, your doubts are welcomed in this community. And that's not just something we say, that's a journey we walk. Because when we get honest with our questions and our doubts, and we voice them, it creates a very powerful bond that we walk together. And in my experience, God is everywhere in the midst of that. Going back to the movie Doubt, Father Flynn, Philip Seymour Hoffman, he began his sermon with, what do you do when you're not sure? And he ends with these words, doubt can be a bond as powerful and sustaining as certainty. When you are lost, you are not alone.